Hello, ladies and gentlemen! I still know how Deltarune is going to end. I mean, not really, but kinda. I did a video about this once about 3 years ago, and then I said, I'm not gonna do any more. You can go to hell if you want more. And you know what, okay, you can come out of hell for like 10 or 15 minutes. We'll talk about, there's a new chapter, I suppose once every 3 years when a new chapter gets released, we can talk about Deltarune. Toby insists that the next chapter will be in 2026, so I'll see you guys in another 3 years. You know, it's funny, I'm pretty sure that I was not married and did not have a child when the first Deltarune chapter came out, and at this point, my child is old enough to be reading and writing their own books. I mean, like, they're not sophisticated, they're still a child, but by the time Deltarune is fully released, I assume I'll have, like, a teenager who's fully able to write on their own. And writing is really the key subject of these videos. I didn't emphasize this enough in the previous video, but what compelled me to make the I Know How Deltarune Ends video was that I was seeing so many just very dumb takes on the story. Now, what I've come to find over the years is that people don't usually think like writers. Some people do, but a lot of people don't. And this actually weirdly gets worse the more that you see somebody consuming theory videos and things like that posted on YouTube, because the theories will be based off of, like, logical conclusions, and you have to understand that stories are not written with logic normally. That is, a lot of theory videos that you'll see online are predicated on this idea that, like, if A equals B and B equals C, then C has to equal A. And they just use this transitive theory of story writing to say, like, oh, well, Gaster did this in Undertale, so Gaster must be doing this in Deltarune. But although stories should have internal logic, we don't actually use logic to write necessarily, and especially with character writing. And one thing that Toby has really been good at is character writing. For good character writing, you need to learn to write with emotions. See, no human alive really acts that much on their logical forebrain. You're able to think things through, but like if you wake up in the morning, you're deciding what shirt to put on, you don't have a mathematical calculation to figure out what's objectively the best shirt to wear. You just have a feeling, like, today I feel like a green shirt, and you put on the green shirt. And that's how stories work, especially character-driven ones, because you're constantly coming to various crossroads where the characters have to ask themselves, like, what am I going to do, and why do I do it? And they do those things based on their feelings. So if you're a writer, you want to write a story, you want to write the next chapter for Deltarune, you're not asking yourself, like, what's the most logical thing that could happen? You're not asking, like, what are the mathematical transitives that I can take from this or that and move over here or anything else like that. Like, that's crazy. That's insane. That's computer thought. People don't think like that. What you have to be able to ask yourself to write well is, what do my characters feel? And then how are those feelings going to lead into actions? So 3 years ago, for example, I predicted that maybe Ralsei might try to trap you in the dark world and say, like, no, you can't go. And that's because we have a lot of themes of abandonment. We see that from the king, and then we see it again with Tenna in chapter 3. And then in chapter 4, we kind of explore the idea of the loss of a loved one. You meet a character, and then you find out, spoilers by the way, so stop now if you don't want this, you find out that he's dead. And then Susie kinda doesn't want to accept that he's gone. Not only that, but Gerson, the character who's dead, is also kind of grappling with the fact that he wants to encourage his son to move on and leave him behind and live forward. So I predicted 3 years ago that Ralsei was going to be the one to say, like, oh, you need to stay in the dark world, and that Ralsei was going to impose that. It looks like maybe Ralsei might not do that. Like, the feeling that you get, Ralsei is very self-deprecating. It seems like he's trying to prime all of his friends to leave him behind and everything. But it still looks like a major conflict of the game, like it's a major theme that keeps coming up. So I might have been wrong on the specifics, like maybe I was wrong to have put that on Ralsei and thought that he would be the one who really presents the finale to that theme. But I do think we're still going to get that theme somewhere. Maybe it's going to be expressed by Chris, who hasn't developed much as a character. It might be expressed by Susie, who really wants to hang on to this Dark World stuff. And it could even still be that maybe at the end Ralsei isn't able to let go. He's trying to psych himself up for it. I mean, he's talking about, like, oh, I'm starting to develop feelings and opinions, and then maybe at the end he's just like, no, I can't bear to do it. Now, I'm not going to press the Ralsei theory because currently it doesn't feel like he's developing emotionally in that direction, but we have learned now that people who have died can be brought back by a dark world. And we've been introduced to Dessa's mother, who seems really overbearing. It's possible that maybe Dessa's mother has been visiting a dark world where her daughter's dust is at. So here's a thought that would follow all the themes. There's a theory that Des is the Roaring Knight, and we know that the dead can be brought back to life in a dark world if their dust and an item related to them is in that dark world. Well, suppose Des died in that bunker, and you can just go down there and see her because in the dark world she's still alive. Well, as a parent, I can tell you that if my child died in a mysterious bunker somewhere, but I could just go down there and see him, I would have a very difficult time accepting that, like, hey, your kid is dead. I'd be saying, no, he's just right over there in this bunker. I can go say hi to him, I can talk to him. Like, I wouldn't just be like, oh, it's okay. I'd be thinking, there's some way I can get him out of there. Like, maybe I understand it's a magical world, but there's some way that he can take the magic with him. I just know it. And so that would really fit these themes of, like, abandonment and needing to let go, and also freedom, because they're trying to give Des freedom, but she's like an object. She's a dead person, and they can't give her the freedom to leave the bunker. Or perhaps they found a way, but Gersten implies that, for example, having the dark crystal, you can see through it and see the true nature of things, it was gonna drive him insane. And so he just didn't touch it and retained his sanity, but you can see it really messed up Spamton and Jeevel, who both did try to understand the world through its lens. Maybe they've done something similar for Des, and it's corrupted her somehow, but I don't know. Like, that's a specific prediction, and specific predictions don't need to really be true for the story to work. So predicting that Rousey was going to insist that everybody stay in the dark world, that's a very specific prediction. And it doesn't have to be accurate. You know, you could go in a different way, you can have twists and turns and have something else come up, but one way or the other, you're going to address that theme of, like, abandonment and needing to let go. Like, there wasn't that much compelling evidence to say that Rousey was necessarily going to betray you. He acts a little shifty, and still kind of does throughout chapters 3 or 4. But I pinned that story beat on him because, as an abandoned toy, it would emotionally make sense for him to carry out that beat and that theme. He's been ruled out as the torchbearer for that somewhat, probably not completely, but now we've also been introduced to Des's mom, who also could be the torchbearer for that, and Susie could still also be the person who brings that theme to an end. Any of those possibilities would work, just so long as they follow the feelings and motives of the character. Also, with a lot of really good stories, you'll have an antithesis to the story's main thesis, so if you're focused on, like, loss and how we have to move on from things, you'll try to express the counter-argument somewhere in there and give both sides of the story a little bit of spotlight. The point of that is kind of to clarify what you're trying to say through contrast. So, for example, you might lose a loved one, but you don't truly lose them, you carry them with you even though they can't be physically with you anymore. When the antithesis is quite strong, this gets to be a really good story because you can see a really good source of conflict. So, for example, if Des being alive in the dark world is what's compelling somebody to try to, like, get Des out of the dark world, that's a really strong argument in the context of the story, because how can you be like, oh, okay, so all right, you can see your dead daughter, you know, suck it up, baby, like, stop talking to your dead child, like, move on. You know, the heroes are kind of in the wrong in that case, and so it's got to be like, well, admittedly, we don't want to let go of our dark world and, you know, abandon Rousey and everything like that, so it becomes there's an internal conflict. You get some man versus self stuff in there. I did also predict that Susie could take things too far and be unwilling to part with the dark world, and that might be where part of the conflict comes from. That could still come up, and that would still fit within the narrative that we've been shown. As it is, she's grappling with the idea of, like, losing the TV. Because even though she sees, like, yeah, in the real world it's just a TV, and Rousey is sitting there saying, like, hey, we're just objects, you need to be willing to let us go, Susie's going like, nah, no, I'll find a good home for this busted up TV. And then when it comes time to be like, oh yeah, like, if you close this, then Des is dead and stays dead forever, then it's kind of like, guys, I don't think I can do this. Then maybe I got it backwards. Maybe Rousey is the one who says, like, no, you have to move on. You have to close this down. And then maybe that's where some of the gap comes from. Then we've also got all this stuff with Chris. It seems to be working with the Knight. And maybe Chris is also trying to keep Des alive because it's clear how close they were. I've seen some theories that maybe Chris himself is actually dead. There's the scene, if you look through the glass, you can't see your own hand. And then there's a secret room with there's a gachapon that'll tell you, like, oh, you can't find your hand. So it's theorized that, I don't know, maybe he lost his hand from frostbite or something cold related. We don't know. But whatever the case, he has motive to want the Dark World left open. We don't know what the motive is, because Chris is nonverbal, he really hasn't done anything. All we hear about him is secondhand, so making predictions about Chris is actually more difficult than making predictions about any other character, because we basically don't know how Chris feels. And the character's feelings are really, for a good story, that's the key to understanding everything. So ultimately, though, that's the real note. Like, if you take anything away from this, I would like it to be that the Gaster theories and all these transitive mathematical theories and breadcrumb thing, like, those are all incredibly stupid and pointless. Like, it's possible we could maybe see Gaster show up. Like, in Chapter 4, we're introduced to Gerson, and he was an Undertale, but I didn't form, like, a really strong emotional feeling about Gerson from Undertale, because he was kind of a bit character. But they show him to us in Chapter 4, and by the end of it, I love Gerson. Like, he's this great character, and I'm attached to him. I care about whether or not he's alive or dead. You feel that loss. It's like you meet a friend, and then he's dead, like, you know, a couple hours later. You can understand what Susie is feeling at that point, like that sense of loss. And then you understand why she wants to go back and see him again, because it's like, oh no, now that I know, like, I understand, like, can we talk a little bit more, though? She's not really ready to let go of him. She wants this closure. And so it could be that maybe Gaster shows up in Chapter 5 or 6, and then we're introduced to him and we're made to feel things about him. But currently it's a non-character. Like, Gaster does not exist. He may have been an Easter egg character in Undertale, but he's not anything yet in Deltarune. And I understand, like, oh, there's some overlaps and some hints that maybe there's something there, but, like, currently there's nothing there. There's no character. There's no motives, there's nothing. It would all have to be fleshed out in the chapter that he appeared, if he ever appears. So at any rate, though, that's kind of the thing. Like, we're looking at a story, we're trying to predict what's going to happen next, and you need two things. It's like a crime scene. First of all, you need a motive. So you need to know somebody who has a reason to do the crimes, or to do the story. If you can find a motive for a character, then after that you would need clues. So with my Ralsei prediction, there was a possible motive, but then after the clues kind of get brought out, it seems like it doesn't really point to Ralsei. Then some of the stuff that gets sprinkled around, it's kind of like foreshadowing. Like, for example, at one point a little angel gets put over your heart while you're wandering around Noelle's house. People say like, ah, yeah, the player character is going to be the angel. The heart, the soul is the angel. Like, maybe, but we don't really have any motives for the soul. So, like, if the soul were to become an angel and destroy the earth, that, like, I could see that in the Snowgrave route, because you've clearly telegraphed your intentions if you take the Snowgrave route. You have to go out of your way to be causing that destruction, and you kind of know what you're gonna do there. You're gonna kill everybody. So you have a clear motive in the Snowgrave route, and I could see you being an angel of destruction. Maybe you could be ascribed motives if you've been sparing everybody and you're trying to save everybody. Then that makes it clear, like, that's what you want. Your motivation for the game is to save everybody, and so you become the angel of salvation that way. Like, those would be a good, compelling reason to say, like, well, the soul will be the angel, because your motives are telegraphed. And then if you take a neutral route, your motives haven't been clearly telegraphed, so maybe you get an outcome where you're not the angel of destruction or the angel of salvation. I don't know. Player character becomes the angel is kind of like, yeah, there's clues, I guess, but the motive thing is a little bit up in the air because that's your self-insert. Still, though, it kind of works because, again, you're kind of expressing your motive. If you try to save everybody, you're being benevolent. If you're trying to kill everybody, you're not being very benevolent, so that informs the game. Like, yeah, this is what this person wants. This is their motive. So I think clearly, you know, you're going to get the outcome that you desired on some level, because I think if the player has to be the angel of destruction no matter what your clear motives were, then the player gets frustrated. Like, if you were going through the game and you're trying to spare everybody and the game's like, no, you have to be the angel of destruction and everyone kills you, it's kind of like, that sucks. I'm mad about that. It's not what I was trying to do, obviously. You know, and it's one thing, like, if you make mistakes, then that's okay, but video games, they only give you the options that you can take. And so, like, clearly if the game is giving you a certain number of options and you're like, well, I'm expressing to you that I want the good ending, and the game's like, no, idiot, you screw up no matter what. Like, I can't think of how many games will do that, and it always makes people angry. They're always mad. They're always like, if I had more freedom to actually make decisions, I wouldn't be making the objectively wrong decision right now. Like, I could see through this. I saw it coming. Like, I would have blocked it off at the pass ages ago. I think a lot of times you see this with, like, a betrayal. Like, if somebody's gonna betray you from miles off, you're sitting there thinking, like, this is an obvious betrayal. Like, this is so obvious. I don't want to sit here and wait for them to stab me in the... Okay, there they stab me in the back. I wish I could have said something. It's like trying to yell at a movie, you know, in like a horror film. He's right behind you. So that's like, it upsets people. But, I mean, that could maybe happen anyway if the game at least acknowledges that it understands you didn't want that and it's happening anyway. So it'll be like, okay, I know what you wanted. I know what you wanted, but I'm not going to give it to you. Honestly, though, with the scenes like we had with Gerson, I really don't imagine that the game is headed to a trajectory where you just don't get what you want and everything is bad and there's nothing you can do. I think that ultimately the soul or whatever will play the role, will play the motives that you express during the game. But anyway, though, as for like other clues and things like that, like, oh, what do you think the final prophecy was? Like, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. As long as it flows from the motives that the characters have expressed and it feels in line with the emotions that the characters have, then that's a valid ending. That's a valid way to wrap up your themes. Several things could be possible, but as of yet, I mean, one of the big reasons why we still don't really know what's happening is not because there aren't enough clues or not because there are no motives. Like, we know the themes of the game, we know kind of the things the game has to address, but if we're comparing this to a crime scene, we don't yet know what the crime is. What are we trying to solve, even? There's like a trail of bloody footprints leading into the kitchen, but we haven't yet gone in the kitchen yet. Like, why is there blood on the floor? Is there gonna be a murder in there? Why did the steps come from another room? Like, what even is this? That's the suspense of the story. That's what you guys are all waiting for. You're not like starting at, oh yeah, obviously Gaster is doing X, Y, and Z, and now we're trying to figure out how he figured. No, we're just waiting to see, like, did somebody get stabbed in the kitchen? And each chapter is like, you go into the next room, you go into the kitchen, and there's the bloody footprints just lead to another room. They go out in the backyard, and now you're following like blood all over the sidewalk, and you're just like, where's this guy going? How did he get so much blood all over his face? Is this even blood? Maybe I should check first? It might be paint. I might not even be following a crime. I guess while I'm at it, I should have gone the other way because the feet are going this way and the crime must be behind him. I guess, unless the guy just has bloody feet. Maybe I'm following Jesus. He's got the stigmata. I don't know. It could all yet just be a big misunderstanding. Maybe it's all a game of make-believe, and that would be incredibly frustrating. Everyone would be mad. So yeah, bottom line, the next time you see a bunch of like crazy theories about what's going to happen next in Deltarune, just bear in mind that basically you're watching someone rant in an insane fashion about what the crime might even be, because they don't know. What we do know are some of the themes that are present in the game, and we know that the game has to address and wrap up those themes. That's kind of the whole core of the story. So we know how Deltarune ends. We don't know the specifics, we don't know the twists and turns, but that's what makes a story fun, is the journey, right? It's not the end that we care about. Like, we know that we have to end on these notes, but the whole getting there, that's the part that we like. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say about it. This is not really a Deltarune channel. I'm not going to talk about Deltarune or Undertale again, so if you enjoyed that and you want more, too bad. Get back in hell where you belong, and I'll catch you next time.